You're doing all the right things. You're up early, you're journaling, you're stacking the tiny habits everyone swears by, and yet, somewhere in the back of your head, there's this quiet, nagging voice that keeps asking the same thing. I'm doing everything right, so why does nothing actually feel like it's changing? Here's the part almost nobody tells you, and it's the part that turns this whole topic upside down. A lot of the self-improvement advice you've been handed isn't making you stronger, it's just wearing you out. It's making you anxious, and worst of all, it's leaving you feeling guilty for not being further along. So here on Brad Walker, we're going to do something a little different today. No shiny new advice. Instead, we're going to take 7 of the most popular, most repeated, most confidently delivered pieces of self-development wisdom, and we're going to pull them apart one by one. They look smart on the surface. Some of them sound almost impossible to argue with, but underneath, a few of them are quietly working against you. And I've saved the most dangerous one for the very end, because it burns people out worse than any of the others. And there's a very good chance you're following it right now without realizing the damage it's doing. So let's get into it, starting with advice number 1. Think only positive thoughts. Stay positive no matter what. In the business world, there's a much blunter name for this. It's called ignoring risk. And ignoring risk is exactly how people and whole companies quietly drive themselves straight into the ground. Because the moment you forbid yourself from feeling anything negative, the moment you slap a smile over your own discomfort, you start throwing away genuinely useful information. Picture this for a second. Your anxiety, your fear, that uneasy knot in your gut, even that blunt thought of, this isn't going to work. That's a warning light on your dashboard. Imagine the check engine light comes on in your car. Are you going to grab a sticker, cover it up, tell yourself everything is fine, and keep driving? Of course not. You'd pull over. You'd look under the hood. You'd find the problem and deal with it before it left you stranded. Your emotions work the same way. Personally, I've learned to treat those signals as a kind of intuition. And when I say intuition, I don't mean anything mystical. To me, intuition is just the sum of everything you've seen and done and learned, all of it quietly processed in the background. So when I'm about to make an investment or jump into a new project, and this small voice in my head says, don't do it, don't put your money here, stay out of this one, I've stopped brushing it off. To me, that voice means one thing. My brain has already scanned everything I know, spotted some hidden risk I haven't consciously named yet, and it's flashing a stop sign. I might not understand where it came from in the moment, but I owe it my attention. Forcing yourself to think only positive thoughts is really just a way of stacking up unsolved problems and pretending they aren't there. So what do you do instead? You admit the negative as a plain fact. Say you're terrified of speaking in public. Don't bury it, just say it out loud. Okay, I'm scared. Then dig. Why am I scared? What's the worst that could realistically happen? How do I prepare for that? You name the fear, you question it, and you let it make you better prepared instead of more reckless. That brings us to advice number 2, and this one nudges people toward genuinely careless decisions. It usually sounds something like this: move fast while everyone else is still hesitating. People love this one because they assume successful people simply have more courage. They're bolder, they're quicker, they pull the trigger while the rest of us are still thinking. But that's not really it. The people who win consistently aren't braver, they're just better at calculating risk. From everything I've seen, there's a razor-thin but absolutely critical line between a bold decision and a reckless one. A bold decision is built on analysis. A reckless one is built on blind romantic faith that it'll all somehow work out. Sure, that romantic gamble pays off once in a while. But today we're talking about the odds, not the rare exceptions you see in the highlight reels. I've watched people walk away from stable, well-paying jobs to chase a half-baked idea. No plan, no backup, no thought given to what happens if it stalls. And the result, more often than not, is a crash, followed by a brutal loss of faith in themselves. So, does that mean you should sit perfectly still and never take a swing? Obviously not. If you spot a real opportunity, sitting frozen guarantees you'll never build anything. You do have to move. But here's the shift I want you to make. Change your intention from act to test. Let me put it in plain terms. No serious startup on the planet launches a product without a test version first. Instead of pouring years and millions of dollars into building some flawless masterpiece that, let's be honest, the market might not even want, they build a simple prototype, they release it, they watch how people react, they gather feedback, they go back and fix what's broken, and they do it again, step by step by step. Do the exact same thing with your big life idea. Don't dump every free hour you have into it overnight. Give it 2 hours a day. Don't empty out the savings you spent years building. Test it on the smallest budget you can manage. No dramatic, all-or-nothing leaps. Just steady, deliberate steps forward. Here's another place this overconfidence wrecks people, and that's money. I'd bet every single one of you knows at least one story like this. Someone watches a video, catches a documentary, gets fired up, and suddenly feels like a brilliant trader or investor. No foundation, no real information, no experience whatsoever. They throw in everything they've got, and they lose it just as fast. We've seen mountains of these stories in recent years, especially around the crypto market. And yet, if you slow down, approach it calmly, gather the right information, and build an actual strategy, that same arena can make you money instead of swallowing it. You can start with the simplest, cheapest possible steps, learning how the market actually works before you ever risk a real dollar. The point isn't the specific field. The point is the approach. Move forward in finance or anything else methodically and with your eyes open, not on a rush of borrowed confidence. Now we get to advice number 3. And I'll admit, this is almost a personal favorite of mine to pick apart. Only compare yourself to who you were yesterday. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Wise even. But chase that advice blindly, and you can spend years polishing a skill the world stopped needing a long time ago. A skill that maybe even you don't need anymore. By comparing yourself only to your past self, you quietly hand yourself 2 things: real professional stagnation and a comforting illusion of growth. The research tends to point the same way. People who track only their own progress, never once glancing at where the wider market or their field is heading, usually advance noticeably slower than the ones who keep an eye on the bigger picture. On the flip side, if you only ever compare yourself to people miles ahead of you, you can drown in a feeling of total inadequacy. And I think you know exactly the feeling I'm describing. So how do you thread that needle? Try shifting your focus again. Instead of comparing, take the best people in your field as a benchmark. That way, you don't just measure your own progress, you see the bar, the actual height worth reaching for. And if you look past the people to the genuinely inspiring things happening in your industry, you start to understand your real value in the market and what's actually worth working on right now. Honestly, I've grown to dislike that word, compare. I prefer something lighter, something that lifts you up, a vision. Being inspired by someone, but never measuring yourself against them. Because we all start from different places, we all walk different roads, and a straight comparison is often just flat out unfair to you. Keeping a standard in front of your eyes is far more useful and far gentler on your mind. That leads us straight into advice number 4. Believe in yourself and everything will work out. I'll be honest, I used to buy this one completely. I figured if I just believed hard enough, I could do absolutely anything. But no, not everything. Time, resources, and frankly the basic laws of physics could not care less how strongly you believe. Success in any real endeavor isn't measured by the volume of your faith in yourself. And I'll go further. The way I see it, an oversized belief in yourself is just plain overconfidence. And overconfidence is a reliable engine for mistakes. I'm convinced real self-belief has to be backed by actual results, real knowledge, and lived experience. The sturdier that structure of genuine accomplishments underneath you, the more confident you get that you can handle whatever trouble shows up. Real, reachable goals are what hand you that confidence. Impossible goals do the opposite. They quietly crush it. And here's the fascinating part. It does not work in reverse. What do I mean? It's simple. Belief doesn't create the result. The result creates the belief. That's exactly why those enormous, unrealistic goals tend to break your confidence far more often than they build it. Because confidence is a byproduct of concrete action and real obstacles you've actually gotten through. Think about it for a second. When something isn't working, do you really fix it by just believing harder? That sounds shaky to me. More likely, you need to change your strategy. Belief in yourself is your starter fuel, not your roadmap. It helps you begin, but it guarantees nothing about the finish. The smartest move you can make is to swap blind faith for conscious responsibility. Instead of the foggy, I can do anything, it's far sharper to say, I can do this, and this, and this specifically. All right, here comes advice number 5. And at first glance, it seems airtight. Cut the toxic people out of your life. Surround yourself only with successful, positive people and walk away from anyone who drags you down. On paper, it sounds completely right. In practice, it very often saws off every meaningful connection you have. And I know this one personally because I lived it. When I was starting out, I wanted to surround myself with nothing but the right people. So anyone who doubted my ideas, anyone who pushed back, anyone who threw a little negativity my way or seemed to slow me down, straight onto the blacklist. The result? I cut off everyone who might say something uncomfortable but important, and I sealed myself inside a perfect little bubble of approval. And that's when things got genuinely strange, because at some point I looked around and realized there was nobody left to ask for honest advice. So here's the crucial distinction. You have to separate toxicity from real constructive criticism. There are people who just complain about their lives and do nothing about it. And then there are people who will look at your plan and say, hey, this idea is solid, but right here and right there, you're going to run into trouble. And here's why. Feel the difference? Right now, there are 0 toxic people in my circle. But there are people who are difficult, inconvenient, even blunt. And here's the tricky part. When someone makes you uncomfortable, check whether it's actually their toxicity or whether it's your own unwillingness to sit with a hard opinion. I think it's time we stop slapping labels on everyone. Toxic, non-toxic, successful, unsuccessful. Try this instead. Don't cut the relationship, set a boundary, and use your actual words when something bothers you. Not the childish, I'm not talking to you anymore, but something like, that tone doesn't work for me, or let's change the subject. That's a skill. And like any skill, you can build it. Keeping people around who think differently than you do, even when it occasionally drives you up the wall, is a genuine asset, and it's not something to throw away. Plenty of the real breakthroughs in my own life and work showed up right after some heated argument with a person I'd once written off as toxic. The only real exception, the people you genuinely should remove, are the ones who consciously, happily set out to destroy you. Those folks? Absolutely. Show them the door. Which brings us to advice number 6, the kind that can leave you achieving absolutely nothing. It goes like this. Real success comes easily. If something feels hard, it's just not your path. How does that sit with you? Try for a second to picture an Olympic champion who quit their sport because it got hard and they weren't winning right away. Think of any athlete you admire at the top of their game. Think of the sheer volume of effort, the exhaustion, the tears, the stubbornness, the years of patience poured into that level of achievement. Now, you might say sports is a different animal. It's all built on raw discipline. And I'd push back on that hard, because honestly, the easiest thing in the world is to say, this is hard, it's not for me, and then bail at the first sign of resistance. The far harder thing is to stay and finish what you started. If I'd listened to this particular piece of advice back when I was beginning, I would have quit every single thing I ever started 100 times over. Because almost nothing I've done was easy, not at the start and not in the middle. Real growth is always tied to getting through something. Sometimes that's physical, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's something else entirely, and you've got to keep searching for ways through. But here's my honest advice to you. Throw out that fairy tale about ease arriving from some imaginary place. Difficulty isn't a sign you're on the wrong road. Very often, it's proof you finally found the right one. And now, we've arrived at the one I consider the most dangerous and the most painful of them all. Step outside your comfort zone. I've had a quiet problem with this advice for a long time because people understand it so shallowly. Usually, when someone says get out of your comfort zone, what they really mean is take on a bit more work, grind a little harder, push a little more, and then things will change. But the way I see it, that's not stepping out of your comfort zone at all. That's, at most, a small dose of discomfort inside the exact same life you were already living. So what's a real exit from the comfort zone? For me, it's not about percentages. It's about a shift in your entire paradigm. It's the moment you genuinely can't keep living the way you used to. Picture your familiar, settled rhythm. Your job, your schedule, your meetings, your workouts, your friends, all predictable. And then you realize the next step doesn't ask you to try a little harder. It asks you to radically change how you live. Say you want to build a company or a project that genuinely changes something in this world. That doesn't mean working 10% more, or 20, or even 30. It means surrendering your familiar comfort for years on end. Instability, no guarantees, constant pressure, decisions made in total uncertainty. It tears your old way of life apart at the seams. Or take another example. You work in an office, but you want to become a public, media-facing person. Content, video, visibility, all of it. The logic of working a little less and filming a little on the side simply doesn't apply. You have to start living in a completely new reality, stepping into public view regularly, taking criticism, looking foolish sometimes, being genuinely vulnerable. That's not 10% of anything. Even if it eats the same number of hours, it's 100% new territory. And in that territory, you're a beginner all over again. And here's the key, because that kind of exit is genuinely uncomfortable, sometimes outright frightening, sometimes destructive to the old version of you. It almost never happens. It demands that you let go of your familiar stability and accept full-blown uncertainty. So the real problem isn't that people refuse to leave their comfort zone. The problem is they keep trying to change their lives without changing the underlying structure of those lives. And it just doesn't work that way. I'm convinced that real, meaningful change almost always takes a real, meaningful shift. Not in your workload, but in your way of living, your way of thinking, and the choices you're actually willing to make. So there you have it. Every one of the dangerous pieces of advice I wanted to put on the table today. But I want to hear from you now. Tell me, which popular piece of self-development advice completely failed you in real life? Maybe there's a big one I didn't even touch, the kind everyone repeats like gospel. Drop it in the comments because honestly, the ones that quietly waste people's time are the ones we all need to hear about, and your experience might be exactly what saves someone else from months of spinning their wheels. If I had to leave you with something practical to carry out of all this, it's this. Stop measuring your life by how faithfully you follow advice and start measuring it by results you can actually point to. Treat your fears as information worth reading, not enemies to silence. Test your ideas in small, cheap steps instead of betting everything at once. Keep the honest, difficult people close and let go only of the ones who truly wish you harm. And when it's finally time to leave your comfort zone, understand that it means changing the shape of your life, not just piling more weight on top of it. Take what's useful here, leave what isn't, and adjust it to your own road, because everything I've shared today is meant to get you thinking, not to stand in for guidance built around your specific situation. If any of this gave you something real to chew on, I genuinely appreciate a like. It helps more people find these conversations. And if you'd like to keep building this kind of thinking together, go ahead and subscribe. We're working our way toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps us get there. I'll see you in the next one.